Okay, all those in favor of approving minutes for March 10th, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good, thank you so much. Next group is for the minutes for the special meeting that we had on April the 4th. Same process, I need a motion, please, to approve these minutes.
So moved, Aiello.
Thank you, Andy. Can I get a second?
Dave Schroeder, second.
Thank you, Dave. Any corrections or discussion on the minutes from April the 4th?
Just wanted to
All
thank you.
right, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
And you
Aye.
guys-
Aye.
So, hey, it's a hard thing, but I'm like, I'm managing, and I think you're doing an excellent job. So thank you.
Any opposed? All right, very good. Thank you so much. And that motion carries. Thanks so much for that. Ellen, I know I saw her before. Ellen Bates, are you on still?
Here.
Awesome. We gonna do a mission moment today?
Yes, we do. And I have PowerPoint presentation. Tara, did you want me to share or you can share?
I can share. I'm ready. I'm pulling it up right now.
Awesome.
Oops, 1 second. Sorry about that. Let me do this a different way. I hit the wrong button. Oh, so apparently when I'm not the host, it looks different. Okay, great. Well, hold on just 1 second and I will pull up that PowerPoint and then we'll do it this way.
That'd be great.
Um,
Normally we like to do a video or have somebody come in person to our meetings, but unfortunately, you know, with Zoom, we have a PowerPoint with some awesome, pictures so you can look at the person that we want to highlight. We're highlighting Trisha Redmond, and so we have a great picture with her and her daughter. There it is. Awesome.
okay,
Sorry.
can you see that?
Yes.
Great. So as I mentioned, we're highlighting Trisha Redmond today. Trisha Redmond is a participant with the Campbell County Detention Center Chemical Dependency Program. Brighton Center and the Kentucky Career Center have had a relationship with the Campbell County Detention Center's program for going on 3 years now. We started doing our job search success classes with the women who are in the program. And so this is a 6-month in jail program. And so we go into the jail, we provide the job search success workshop, we work with them on their resumes. And then we also provide the 2 years of aftercare for those women as they come out of the jail and kind of start the reentry process. And so Trisha is a recent success story. You know, through her battles with addiction, she found herself in the detention center in November of 2019. She was lucky enough to be able to be a part of the chemical dependency program. And be able to participate in the classes and the curriculum that goes along with that. Part of which is, of course, the job search success workshop, but also, you know, a robust curriculum of parenting education and kind of learning about her addiction battle. And so we met her in January of this year through the workshop. She was an incredibly active participant. You know, she engaged in all of the mock interviewing, really took to heart the work that we were doing in that, practiced, you know, her tough questions. We talked about her background and how she would talk about that in an interview and be able to, oh, I lost my slide.
Oh, so sorry.
That's okay.
There it is.
I don't see it again, but that's okay. I know Trisha's story well. So we really talked about, her ability to, how she would talk about her background in that class. And so she was prepared. She was released in the middle of March. So right at the onset of all of this, of COVID-19. But because we'd worked with her, she had her resume ready to go and she had her interview ready to go. As part of her probation and parole, she's got a lot of things that she kind of needs to, needs to check up the boxes on, which is made a little bit more difficult by the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, one of those being finding employment immediately. And so she hit the ground running, immediately began working with a business service representative like the day after she was released from the detention center, and was connected to a temporary job to be able to help her, meet those requirements for her probation and parole. But the great thing about Trisha, she really didn't stop there. She continued looking for that next step for her, and was working with the talent development specialist to continue to fine tune her interview skills and her resume, and recently found employment with Restaurant Depot as a senior inventory control manager. Trisha is really excited to be making a salary of over $40,000 a year. So she's thrilled to be able to support her family, support her daughter in that. This is right along with her background. She has a background in restaurant management, but this is really taking her out of those, she had a trigger of kind of being in the service industry. And so this is allowing her to transition her skills from that past experience into an environment that is better for her to be able to maintain her sobriety. Additionally, Trisha has a long-term goal of being a business owner. And so through working with Brighton Center and her family-centered coach, we have connected her with SCORE, which is an organization that works with small businesses and entrepreneurs. And Trisha recently gained a business mentor through that process. And so she is working, making a living wage, and then still working towards her long-term hopes and dreams of becoming a small business owner. So we wish we could have Trisha here today to tell you a little bit more about herself, but wanted to share her story as well.
Terrific. Thanks, Ellen.
Mhm.
That's for me, that's always the best part of this, because it kind of reminds us this is what it's all about. So thank you. This is my favorite part of these meetings for sure.
Mine too.
Okay, very good. So let's move on then to committee updates. I'm gonna turn the floor over to Jamie Parsons for Program and Youth, and we do have an action item with that committee. So Jamie.
The first item that we have is the proposed FY21 budget that was presented to the Program Youth Committee, and that was approved to move forward. It was also reviewed with the Executive Committee and approved to move forward, and getting the final approval now with the full board. I'm not sure who wants to walk us through that budget. I hadn't had any discussions about this, so you want me to do that, or?
I think if Liberty's on, I think she can help us.
Okay, Liberty, we can turn it over to you then.
Thought I saw her.
Yeah, she's on.
She on mute?
Maybe she's on mute.
I'm sorry, I was talking and I was on mute. So sorry, guys. I'm more than happy to walk through this. Okay, I feel a little silly because I was going through it by myself. Okay, so this is the FY21 projected budget. Listed here, we have a list of our current grants and an estimate of what I think our carryover dollars will be on these grants. And can we go to the next slide? Okay. This is our projected allocation. The state did get back to me. So these numbers here are planning figures for the adult, dislocated worker, and the youth. The planning figures, they will be different. Historically, they usually come in a little bit less than what we're expecting, but this is what the state provided me with. Okay, and then the next section here, this is our set aside, our obligations. You'll see the WIBS line item, the operator and direct service provider. That is all included for FY20. The set aside obligations, the jobs EQ, that's a software that David uses for his data. And then we have the grow, rent space, work experience, that is the 20%. That's an estimated number. That number will change once we get our new allocation and we know exactly what our carryover dollars are going to be. The education, excuse me, the education career enhancement funds, that's the equivalent of the ITAs, but that's for youth for their training. And then we have the individual training accounts, the ITAs. And you'll see that right now, if we, right now we have, it looks like we have an unobligated balance of 85,000. That number will change as the projected carryover, it's a projection, as well as the allocations. And as we get real information, I'll update this sheet. But right now, this is what we're projecting is going to happen for FY21. And that's it.
Any questions for Liberty? All right.
Sorry, Jamie, this is Andy. Quick question. I think we talked about at the last meeting that there weren't any WIOA funds at the federal level in the first round of the CARES Act or any of the federal bills that were passed over the last few months. Is there any discussion about the next round of federal support, if any of that will go toward workforce programs, which could therefore change our budget?
Well, Tara and Dana can probably speak better than I can, but I do know that there is dislocated worker dollars available that we're in the process of applying for. Tara, do you want to provide more?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that. Andy, we were going to, we can definitely talk about this now. We were going to outline this a little bit for you later on as well. So the state, the Commonwealth, did apply to Department of Labor and received $6 million. They actually applied for $25 million, and they could potentially draw down more than 6, but they've been definitely approved for $6 million. That would be for dislocated workers in particular. And so we are currently working on an application this week. It's due next week. For our region to hopefully receive some of those dollars. And we also are monitoring, there was a change in the CARES Act related to the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, that ends up having some impact on workforce, even though it's not direct WIOA funding. And so we have a meeting, I believe it's tomorrow, to meet with Lisa Cooper and Megan Sanfus at the ad to try to see how we could incorporate workforce dollars into a grant application to the EDA as well. So we're definitely trying to see how we can better, just best use the resources that are currently out there, and certainly watching to see what comes through in the next phase.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. Did anybody else have a question? Yeah.
All right. Hearing no other questions, this is a action item. So if we could have a a motion and a second on the FY21 budget as presented.
Yeah, so Jamie, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you as the chair, you can actually make the motion on behalf of your committee. We would just need a second.
We can do it that way as well, if that's the way you want to do it.
Yeah, we can.
So I'll make the motion then, and we just need a second.
I'll second, Mr. Schutzman.
Thank you,
All right.
Carissa.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, budget passes. The next thing on our agenda is a review of the operator and direct services monitoring report. Ellen, is that you, or Tara, is that you? There's nobody on there that's supposed to go over that.
Yeah, actually, Jamie, so that would be staff. Our staff went through the standard annual contract monitoring, and then are actually now going from that to the state monitoring that we will undergo. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he can talk a little bit about that process.
Hey,
That's great.
thanks, Tara.
Okay.
So we actually discussed this topic in depth at the Program Youth Committee meeting last month, and we also shared the information during the Business Services Committee as well. So this is just kind of a final review of the results from this contract monitoring. So just as a recap, the purpose of this monitoring really is to assure fiscal integrity and financial controls, program compliance, administrative compliance, and also EEO and discrimination compliance. And so that's just a little bit of background about how this formal contract monitoring takes place. We do it in this comprehensive method once a year, a minimum of once a year, unless there are issues or problems that arise during the monitoring. But in this particular instance, we did one time. And then if we want to scroll to the next slide or advance to the next slide, these are the results of this activity. So our contractor is Brighton Center. We underwent a fiscal monitoring that really involved an on-site visit to Brighton Center's administrative facility, where financial supporting and source documentation was reviewed. We selected 2 months, staff selected 2 months to review all of the source documentation, informed Brighton Center of that, underwent the process of spending about a day or a half day rather to review the information. And then in the next phase was really focusing more on the programmatic side. So we dug deep into the direct services for adults, dislocated workers, business services and youth, reviewing participant files, reviewing data, reviewing performance and outcomes. And then we also reviewed the performance and outcomes of the one-stop operator. And so that primarily, both of those activities between the fiscal and the program monitoring took place between March 2nd and April 3rd. The results of that monitoring activity included observations, and observations are essentially issues that were identified that weren't necessarily monitoring findings, but if unresolved or left untreated, could result in findings later down the road. So we had 3 program-related observations, 2 fiscal-related observations. All of those items were discussed and addressed with proper resolutions in place. There were no findings that were identified during this process. So ultimately, contractual and WIOA compliance was found to be accurate. And we have a full compliance report that was provided again to the program youth committee members. So they have that full breakdown and specifics about the actual results of the monitoring. And so we are preparing to undertake the next phase, which would be our state monitoring. This typically happens once or twice a year. In the past couple years, it's just been once. And this is what they're calling a technical assistance review. So they're going to be starting that process beginning the week of the 18th, where they're going to be reviewing much of the same types of things I just discussed, but it will be individuals from the Department of Workforce Investment that will be doing a lot of that monitoring remotely. They have not talked about coming on site, but we will. I said all that to say that if we need to circle back on this topic based on any results that come out of that state monitoring, we will bring that before the Program Youth Committee for review and then ultimately back to this full board. So that's my update. Tony, I don't know if you have any additional information to add.
Well, I'll just say I reviewed the youth and I did it remotely, just as the state intends on doing it. I found absolutely nothing that was the fault of the contractor. Every problem or issue I found dealt with Key Suite. So I did recommend for our future monitorings and for Brighton Center future monitorings that they copy the comments in Key Suite, because we did have some comments that apparently disappeared, multiple in fact, and so that is just a safeguard for them. Other than that, everything looked exactly as it should.
Great. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. Jamie, anything else from Program and Youth?
No, there's not. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So, Andy, would you please give us a business services update?
Sure, thank you, Dana. We did not have quorum, so we didn't officially have a meeting. We had a discussion on a few important items. I mean, one was just the contextual change that we've seen over the last 3 months in terms of what the BSC was focused on, and then, you know, with 3% unemployment, shifting to the environment that we're in today. Brighton and WIB staff also talked a lot about the work that they had been doing to make those adjustments to support the employers all along the way. Then we kind of moved into a discussion about what the BSC and what the WIB can be doing to support businesses as the ramp up begins and as folks try to, one, come into compliance, and then two, maybe retool or restaff under the new kind of world order, if you will. So we talked about the continued partnerships with the Chamber and Triad and others to make sure that those lines of communication stay open so we can do our part as our community tries to get back to quote unquote normal. And then the last piece of discussion that we had was about just benefits in general and how the benefits themselves, depending upon the level and the way that they're administered at the state, could potentially hamper the workforce getting back to work. We've seen reports about a lot of folks who, you know, are making more on unemployment than they were prior to the pandemic. And I think some businesses are very concerned about being able to keep a workforce as they reopen, given some of the programs and the way they're being administered from the state. So that's kind of a summary of our discussion. Again, we didn't have quorum, so we didn't take any action, but happy to take any questions from there.
Yes, silence is golden, Andy. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Thank you for that. And absolutely, I'm hearing the same things about concern about workforce returning back to work given the current climate. So with their unemployment, so maybe as a board we need to be thinking about that and maybe have some additional conversations. Andy, when's your next month? Does your committee meet again next month?
Yes, in June on the 17th. And I think that the report that we saw in terms of data at our meeting back in April is already old. Things had changed so rapidly over the last few months, and the data that we were looking at was slightly before everything hit. So once we see updated data today, we kind of have a not an action item, but a recommendation that Tara and Jason and I follow up with Brent and Dave. They had both mentioned that they want to continue the conversation to kind of dig into how we can look at the data a little bit more frequently so we can be reactive to what we're seeing going on.
Very good. Thanks, Andy. All right, so membership and board operations. John, I know you have a couple items on here. One is an action item of a new member nomination, I believe.
Correct. Let's first wanted to start off with the member spotlight. Today we have Sharon Starkey-Taylor, who's the CEO of Learning Grove. So I'll let her do her introduction.
Great. Hi, everybody. And Tara, if you could, click through our slides for me, that would be great. Thanks for letting me do the member spotlight. I'm happy to be here today, and I'll pretty much be going over what Learning Grove looks like pre-pandemic, but I'll weave in a little bit about what we're doing in response to the pandemic. And I just have a few slides. So Tara, if you could go to the next one. So first off, just a little bit about me. Many of you probably know the founder of Children Inc. So in January 1st of this year, Children Inc. and Cincinnati Early Learning Centers merged to become Learning Grove. Prior to that, I was brought on as a COO to replace Rick Hulefeld, and that was in 2018. I've got a background in social work and ed administration, and I'm busy at home now with 4 daughters, one stepson that lives in Indiana. So those girls were adopted by my husband and I. It'll be a year this June. They were one sibling group. They came to us 3 at once, and then a newborn came to us a year later. So between being a CEO and those, being a family of 5, which I still like choke when I say, I would have never done that. And my friends from high school were like, really? They keep me super busy, but we're super blessed. So that's just about me. We live in Loveland, Ohio, and really are pretty resilient right now during this pandemic. So back to Learning Grove, our mission, and obviously this was just formed in January, is to develop and support innovative quality programs that empower children, youth, and families across diverse communities. So we do cover cradle to career, so that's why we have youth. So we have everything from prenatal home visitation, all the way up to Navigo, which is at the far end of our continuum. So next slide. So why we do this, it's pretty clear, and I don't have to preach to this group, which is always refreshing, but 90% of a child's brain development happens before the age of 5. So at Learning Grove, we just feel like it's critically important to get in as early as possible to provide either home visitation or early care and education. And then we just try to make sure to nurture that development all the way through college and career. So just a reminder about the why. There's a lot happening in the early years. Next slide. So this is where we work. So we have over 100 schools and locations. We're as far north as Bond Hill in Ohio, the Cincinnati area, and then as far south as Walton, Verona. So that map just gives you a scattering of that. Next slide. Some of our metrics, so just to discuss our impact, is that children enrolled for at least a program year were assessed age appropriate and social emotional development. That's a huge part of our programming, is to make sure that we talk about the worry and the stress that children have. We have social emotional coaches available, so that makes us a little bit unique. And then our preschool enrolled for a program year were assessed age appropriate and cognitive and language skills, which would equate for them being ready for kindergarten. We're proud of those outcomes. You want to go to the next slide? So humbly, we believe our strengths are that we're innovative leaders. Innovation's been a core part of what we do. Anytime you have a founder that's very entrepreneurial-like, that carries on as a core competency throughout. We have deep roots in our community, particularly in Northern Kentucky. We believe that we're leading content experts. We're often asked to sit at key tables, just like we are now at both Ohio and Kentucky, of how childcare will come back after this pandemic. We have a culture of innovation and continuous improvement. And then some of our advantages, competitive advantages, are our rich history and impacts and results. We couldn't do this without, we have over 100 community partners, and that's more about our partners than about us bragging. And it just shows that a rising tide lifts all boats. So whether it's Randy through Boone Schools, or Alicia through Life Learning Center, or Katrina through Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission, we really try very hard to make those connections and provide high quality childcare, parent education, or Navigo college and career readiness where people need us the most. We do have market share of the 5 stars. So we've got the most 5-star rated programs in our region. And we believe that we are uniquely positioned also because we do a lot of local and state advocacy, and many of you are aware of Mike Hammonds, which I'll just say Mike Hammonds for president. That's what I'm going to say about that. And next slide. Next slide. I know, he's so great. So this just gives you an idea of the continuum I talked about. So I won't read this to you. The bulk of our services, as you can see, are supporting children and students, over 3,000 a year. People mostly know us for early care and education. We were fortunate enough to acquire Navigo with Tim Hanner's program in 2017, in that July. We also have been known for school age services. At any given point, we're either in 60 or 90 schools. So that program kind of ebbs and flows based off of school needs. And then Navigo and Navigo Scholars. And then support for parents. You can see that we do everything from home visitation through Every Child Succeeds. We've got a home visitor for Kenton County where we do some school readiness, and then family outreach. We have early childhood resource coordinators that are similar to, if you're familiar with Amy Cooley, who works at Erlanger. We really try to put people in the community that actually can connect home to school. And then those that are not receiving high quality childcare, we try to provide home visitation to give them a little bit of boost before they get to kindergarten. And then we also provide opportunities for professionals and just some gifts to the community, whether it's our innovation lab that develops programs and products, or through our state advocacy. And just parking on this slide for a second, Tara, we do have 2 pandemic childcare centers open right now, one in Covington at the previously named Treasure House, which we now call Learning Grove at River Center. So we're serving about 12 families at that location. And then we do have one at East Walnut Hills, which is serving 18 families. So the pandemic center at Kentucky will be prepared by June 15th to switch back, because the governor has opened up childcare as effective of June 15th. So that's what we're up to right now. Stating the obvious is just getting ourselves prepared for all of the different rules and regs. And then just predicting how many parents will come back that haven't been furloughed, or actually who don't have a fear of putting kids back in care. So we're advocating at the state level to make sure children return safely, and we're just logistically planning for all of that. And I think that's my last slide. Is that right? Oh,
Yep.
No. Ta-da! So let me talk to you a little bit about Learning Grove, particularly now with the merger. What I want the takeaway to be is that Children Inc. is still around. It's been here for 40 years, but now we're even stronger with the merger of Cincinnati Early Learning Center, and we're now Learning Grove. Questions? Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Shannon. Before we let you off the hook here, you have one last obligation, and that is to pick the next person.
Ooh, this is the fun one. Woo! Oh, Katrina. Has Katrina went yet? Katrina from Northern Kentucky Community Action Commission.
I'll be glad to do it. Thank you.
Oh, I was scrolling to see your face because I wanted to see if it was like, I love you or I hate you.
Yeah, you missed the initial shock. I'll go back.
Good thing she was on mute, right?
I was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'll be glad to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina. Thank you, Shannon.
Okay.
Okay. So we have one action on it for the group, and that is a new member nomination. That is in your packet that you received from Tara. Do we have that as a slide, or should I pull it up? There we go.
We have some highlights.
I knew you would have it. Look at that. So we have Lisa Morris, who is an HR at North American Stainless, up for nomination. Again, to remind everyone about the intent of what our group is trying to bring together, which is an increase in terms of representation for the full area that we cover. So we were really excited to have Lisa as a potential member because of her work in Carroll County. Actually, well, I've not done this that often, so Lisa is on the call. Would you like to do a bit of an introduction for yourself? I thought I saw Lisa on the call. Yep, there she is.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. So yeah, I've lived in Carroll County for 30 years. I went to high school here, graduated high school, went to U of L, and got my bachelor's degree at U of L. I then went on to University of Phoenix and got my master's degree in HR. I also have my certification in HR. I've been with North American Stainless going on, it's officially 5 years last month. But I've been raised around North American Stainless, know it very well. It's always been a part of our community. I also worked for the school board for a while here at Carroll County. So I'm very involved with what happens here at Carroll County and what we need. I'm also part of the consortium scholarship with JCTC, which is a partner between 5 manufacturing companies and JCTC to bring a full ride scholarship. So.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
So I believe as chair, I'm allowed to present this. I can make the motion.
You can.
Okay, so let's move at this point to approve Lisa for membership on the board. Can I get a second?
Second.
Michelle Sesteric, a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? So with all in favor, the motion passes. Welcome, Lisa.
Welcome, Lisa.
Awesome.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you all. Sorry, I had to find the right mouse. I got 2 computers going.
Okay. All right, John, anything else for MBI?
No, I mean, just to I guess some final parting comments there. We are working to ensure that we are compliant in terms of membership makeup. As such, there is still an ongoing search for a replacement on the labor side. One of the longtime members of the board from labor representation has been unable to fully participate, and we have reached out to a number of people who we believe would be both a good fit for the board and certainly qualify in terms of the legal requirements for that representation. So we're hopeful to have that resolved in the coming months. And otherwise, the board makeup is continuing to expand in terms of diversity for geography, makeup, industry, et cetera. So I think the work is going well, and we have a very healthy committee. Dean joined us for his first meeting last time, and it's a very engaged group looking to do the work the right way. So tonight, it's an easy committee to lead as well.
Terrific. Thanks so much, John.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's move on to programming. And Tara, I know you're going to do a director's report. I saw, I think, a chat from Katrina. Could you include, and you may be wanting to do this already, but an update on the unemployment, the status of the claims? It's,
Yes.
That would, yeah, in your report, that would be great. So I'll hand that off. I'll hand it over to you then.
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a slide, and hopefully actually everybody has seen the slide already. I did want to just highlight that our whole team, in conjunction with the Brighton Center team, we are working to get updates out on a weekly basis, because we do know that things, Andy mentioned this, are changing so very quickly. They were changing when we were all being healthy at home, and now that the economy is transitioning, we hope, pretty quickly back to being healthy at work. We know things are moving quickly. So I'm hoping that these will be going out every Monday. We've been kind of playing around a little bit with the delivery day of the week, but just a few highlights from the week that hopefully you can skim over quickly. And then if there's something that you're interested in or you have questions, please feel free to reach out as these come out. And then love the map component. So we'll try to highlight, a bit of information. So as you can see, this week's was about the census. It is really important that all of our counties get as high as possible on completion rates of the census, because as we all know, the numbers in the census really correspond directly to so many different federal funding aspects. So definitely, you know, have a little healthy competition here to try to get those numbers up in several of our counties. As far as, I appreciate the question about unemployment rate. Last week we saw the April numbers come out, and we saw the highest month-over-month increase at 10.3 percentage points, up to an April rate of 14.7%. However, we really know that even as high as 14.7% is for unemployment, and that's nationally, we know that our communities locally are being affected even more than that. Estimates are that about 30% of Kentucky's workforce is affected in some way with what's going on with the shutdowns and people being either furloughed or laid off, or perhaps their hours have decreased, or even maybe their wages have decreased. And so 30% of our labor force is just a staggering figure. And obviously we're very concerned about that. I'm sure that Corey and Ellen will talk about this a little bit in their update. But we are, you know, locally through the WIB and very close partnership with Brighton Center as our subcontractor and operator of the Career Center, and also with the state. Connie Schnell, please, if you see Connie, I know she's on this call, please thank her for everything that she is doing for people who are affected by unemployment. Connie, I hope you are sleeping, because I feel like you are available 24/7 to answer questions and calls, because the number of people that are still trying to file for unemployment is really, again, using the word staggering. We heard yesterday an update from somebody working for the state in the Office of Apprenticeship, that there's about 15 people trying to get through about 98,000 calls. Those may be, some of those may be duplicative, because as you might imagine, someone is trying to reach out to get their unemployment claim settled, and they haven't been able to reach someone because the systems are just so overburdened. Many people are putting in multiple calls and emails to many different sources trying to get those taken care of. But we do know that the numbers are still very high. And, you know, we've been both advocating for more resources as much as the state is able to do to respond to those unemployment calls and emails. We've been working with other WIBs and, you know, as well as the state to just collaborate in any way that we can to try to make that system work as well as it can. I mean, it was created in 1978. And unfortunately, the state was actually in the process of conducting an RFP to get a new unemployment system up and running. It takes about a year or two to do that. So, but they were in the RFP process when all this started. And so certainly all of our colleagues in Frankfurt are very well aware of the constraints and the issues with this, and frankly have moved mountains to respond as quickly and as innovatively as they have. So this is no criticism of them. It's just a huge task. We're also pursuing funding, both private dollars and public, both state and federal funds, to try to get resources when we do reopen the Kentucky Career Centers to physical in-person traffic, and also to be able to continue those virtual services. So we're supporting the effort in that. And obviously our team is working hand in hand with Brighton Center to try to support all the logistics of in-person services. We also have been working with the Chamber and with Triad on looking at what rapid response looks like, because we have had a number of larger layoffs, just to make sure that we're all aligned in that response. And we have some new videos that are on our website. Their link is actually in your at a glance here at the top, this nkcareercenter.org/resources. If you want to see any of those videos, they're all located there. Even though it's designed, some of them are designed for rapid response, they really would be good for any employer who is, dealing with needing to lay off employees, or any individual who is experiencing a layoff situation right now, because they really highlight all the resources in the community and with through the Kentucky Career Center and all of our partners. And then we're trying to communicate as much as possible. That's why we're doing the at a glance emails. And that's also why various staff members have been participating both in the chambers, virtual events, and various webinars. And we have a Partner for Success event tomorrow, all about the changing environment of education and training, featuring one of your fellow WIB members, Dr. Schutzman. So I hope that you all might be able to join us for that. And again, the link to sign up is in your at a glance document. So I'll also be joining Judge Knockelman on June 1st for one of his daily video chats as well. So I hope that answers your questions about unemployment and what we're doing. If you want any additional data, we've been working closely with KY Stats. They have county by county data right now about unemployment, but we are trying to work with them to allow us to combine their county data into regional data, which is unfortunately more complex than one might think. So, but we do have access, if you'd like the link, to see the county by county, and it actually gets down into industry level impacts of the unemployment situation, as well as demographics. So both race and ethnicity, as well as gender. So pretty interesting if somebody's looking for more details.
Tara, I just added 2 links to the Zoom chat.
Great.
To the weekly unemployment updates and the county weekly unemployment updates.
David, thank you so much for doing that. I can't see that when I'm
Okay.
sharing my screen, so that's awesome. Thank you so much. Did anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we can turn it over to Ellen and Corey maybe for more details.
I know thank you for the update on the unemployment. I know we're hearing from people that they applied in March and
Yes.
they were approved, but still have not received anything. So, and they get another number to call, and then they'll get an automated call back saying, yes, you've been approved, we'll call you. And they, for months and months, have heard nothing. So I don't know if there's a special line for the people that have applied and that have been approved in March, but still have no follow-up.
Right.
I really just want to advocate for them.
Absolutely. Hey, Katrina, 2 things. One, did Deputy Secretary Benton ever get back with you on your offer to help with UI?
He did. He responded and referred me to another lady, but I have not heard back from her, so I've emailed her again. So hopefully they'll respond back, because we do have those assisters that work in that same system and would be happy to help to process some of those, if they make that helpful. Yeah.
Okay. We've had a little bit of trouble getting some of the Kentucky Career Center staff into the system as well. So maybe you and I could connect later today after this and brainstorm a little bit about what we might do for this, if that works for you.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hey Tara, this is Brent. And we're hearing the same thing. So maybe I could chat with you as well. I've got some specific examples. I talked to somebody yesterday that had been waiting for, I think they've been waiting now 6 weeks and they haven't received anything. I know they were calling yesterday and were on hold for quite some time. I'm trying to get a confirmation on how long, but
yeah. I have a screenshot that someone sent me that they were on hold for over 7 hours. And that was just one of the days that they called that they happened to think to take a screenshot of their phone. It's genuinely outrageous. The problem is that we know that the state has gone from, you know, about maybe 20 to 30 people to more than 1,000 in terms of call centers. The issue is that when they hired or contracted with the call centers, most of those individuals were approved. If you think about a tiered system, from one being maybe they can just answer questions about what documentation is needed. Second tier, you know, those individuals are going to be able to maybe change a PIN number or update a password, or, you know, maybe make very minor changes. Tier 3 is for really the more complex. Maybe somebody had multiple jobs, which we know is often the case, or maybe they worked at, you know, we're at a border, so maybe they worked in multiple states. So really the more complicated calls are in that tier 3. And there's only, I mean, at one point there were only about 40 people for the entire state that were answering all those tier 3 calls. I think it's increased now to maybe more like 60 or 80. But still, when you think about the more than 600,000 claims that have been filed, that is just not enough people. You know, and again, I mean, the state has geared up significantly, but it's just not been enough to handle the demand. And I mean, and they know it, and they keep doing more and more and more. But the problem is the claims just keep coming. So yeah, I would love to put together a brainstorm about maybe what else that we think we might be able to do. It's definitely a huge challenge.
Hey, Tara.
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is Dean. I know we don't want to turn this into war story hour, but I can, you know, I think you and I have talked about this already once. And so we did a mass upload for our people. Yeah. And a lot of them went through some of the same problems that you're hearing here. And Jason has been wonderful to help me with a couple of things with people. And one of the things that he shared with me, and I've seen as I've gotten deeper into this, is when people feel like the system's not working, they go in and reapply.
Oh yeah.
And they sometimes
so bad.
I had one that had reapplied 3 other times, so it just locks the system up. But yeah, the other thing I can share that's a positive is some of those same people that I've been trying to get help for in the past week, they're starting to get some hits, and they're getting caught up, and their problems are being resolved. So that's you know, that's positive thing number one. So they're getting there. And the other thing is that the UI group that handles the mass uploads sent me a note probably a week before last, where they established an email and a format that we could send in the employees' information directly to them, so they could try to step in and help with that. So those are just a couple of things that I know, and you know, I've still got a few people out there that are struggling, but by and large, it looks like they're all getting taken care of.
That's really good news, Dean. We have heard that the email address for employers, if you've got an e-claim or just another question, it's workforce@ky.gov, and we're seeing very good response times on that for employers. You know, within a day, getting a response, which I think is pretty good when we consider, you know, perspective on some of the other things. So I'm really glad to hear that some of your folks have seen relief, and hopefully that means that, you know, they've been able to make a dent in the last week or so. That's wonderful.
Tara.
Yes, sir.
This is Dave. I do know that some other folks in the cabinet, the workforce development cabinet, who are in other divisions, have been pulled into and help in the situation. So I know some folks from the Kentucky Department for Libraries and Archives have been temporarily reassigned from libraries and archives to helping with unemployment. So I think the cabinet is doing as much as they can to try to pull people in and trying to fill those positions and answering those calls. The volume has just been enormous.
It absolutely, I completely agree with you. I know Danita is on this call with Skills U, Adult Education, and I know Danita, you were telling me that that you all have been pulled in as well. I mean, no,
Yes, we've been
absolutely.
reassigned, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I do completely agree. I think the cabinet is doing amazing things to try to, respond to the need. The other thing is that Kentucky is, if not the only state, one of the only states that did take advantage of all 4 of the federal programs that were, made available to help with unemployment in terms of lengthening the number of weeks that somebody can be receiving unemployment, and with the $600 per week, and some of the other things. So I mean, they're trying to do as much as they can for the people impacted by this, but it's just a lot of people. Yeah.
I will mention, Tara, that one of the holdbacks for processing is the identity, that they're getting their identification in. They need forms, and it would speed up the process if they would go ahead and upload those on site. That's been one of the drawbacks that's kind of held people up. So if you want to share that with anyone.
Okay. To go ahead and is it like their driver's license or some other
Yeah,
kind
there's 2 forms. Yes. There's 2 forms of identification that they're supposed to present. And so that's either, driver's license, social security card, just proof of residency. There's a few different items that they'll accept also.
Okay. I could see people maybe worrying about putting that on there, or maybe not having access to.
Hey, Tara, this is Connie. And one of the reasons that takes place, it's not a mandatory thing for every single person filing a claim. Usually what happens, there's security questions, verifications that they have to answer. If they answer a question wrong, then that will prompt identification.
Oh, okay.
And then also, sometimes forgetting their mismatched names, when someone gets divorced or what have you, that will prompt the upload. So every time an individual files a claim, just a regular claim, they do not have to upload those documents. It's just prompted when something like that happens.
Which
I'm
probably
sorry.
kind of
Yes, thanks for clarifying that, Connie.
That's okay. And the 2 forms of identification that Tara just mentioned, or yourself, it is. And if they can't, we've heard that before, that they cannot upload, they're having a hard time. There's an email site for that they can actually email those documents. And I believe that might be on our website, but I can definitely share that with Tara afterwards, and she can distribute that out to everyone just in case. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Connie. Okay, well, if that's okay, we're going to let Ellen and Corey do their update.
Awesome, thank you. So obviously the big topic of conversation is unemployment. We, as we just discussed, been fielding a lot of those calls, but I also wanted to provide an update on, some of the other services that we provide at the Career Center, and how we've been able to transition those and the impact on our WIOA customers. And specifically when our registered WIOA customers. So as a reminder, we have our kind of larger group of overall kind of in the door customers that might be receiving a basic career services level. And then we have our individualized career services or intensive career services, which are those individuals that are registered into WIOA, many of whom are going into training. So of course the educational institutions were hugely impacted through this. So wanted to provide an update that all of our customers who were enrolled in training at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic have been able to successfully convert to online or remote learning. So really glad that they were able to continue in that. Our talent development specialists have really wrapped around and increased the services that they're providing during this time, because you know, for many people that's a difficult transition to make. Digital equity is a huge thing right now. You know, having access to Zoom, having access to a laptop. Of course, a lot of people have phones, but very difficult to complete, you know, your 3-hour course on a smartphone. And so we've really been making sure that touching base with customers more frequently. We are communicating with our training customers on a weekly basis, and typically we do that on a monthly basis, but really wrapping around those supports to them during this time. We have had one customer who needed to request an extension to their training due to changes in their scheduling because of the transition to COVID-19, and we were able to get that to happen. And then we have had 4 customers who weren't quite at the point where they were starting training when all of this happened, who have unfortunately had to delay their start to training because the program that they are wanting to do was not able to convert to online or remote learning. Although we have had 2 customers who have been able to successfully enroll into online classes since that time, you know, since the pandemic began. And we've seen a lot of our training providers. We've had 7 of our, you know, training providers be able to transition their, you know, what are normally in-person classes to an online model. We know that will continue to impact through the summer, and we're kind of, you know, anxiously awaiting what will happen in the fall for those customers. Having conversations about you know, what online learning looks like for customers who weren't, you know, previously wanting to do that. One of our big programs, of course, is the commercial driver's license. That one is a program that is unable to transition to remote learning, have to be able to be in the car, have to be able to really get that practice in. And so as a result of that, we have postponed our youth cohort with Gateway CDL program and CVG until further notice. We're hoping to get that started as things, you know, reopen, and we're having those conversations with Gateway and CVG. And thank you both to, you know, being flexible with us and continuing in that conversation. We really appreciate that. Also wanted to highlight some, you know, some great things, of course, with so many people on unemployment. Brighton Center has seen a huge increase in the number of individuals seeking emergency assistance, assistance with food, hygiene items. Our family center received a 300% increase in those services through the month of April, which is just staggering is kind of the word of the day here. So really staggering in that. We were able to partner with Free Store Food Bank and Helping Hands in Grant County to do a food distribution at Grant County Park. We served over 400 families, or I'm sorry, we served 400 families and over 1,300 individuals during that. The judge exec in Grant County, Chuck Dills, was a huge support of that, and a big shout out to the Kiwanis in Williamstown, who provided to be able to help with hygiene items during that time. Tara, if we can go to the next slide, that'd be great. And then, of course, the businesses impacted, you know, is obviously another point of conversation today. Some of the highlights of how we've transitioned our services. I think, you know, we've seen some really great best practices that have come out of this situation, and a little bit of a silver lining of some things that we will hopefully be able to continue as things start to return to normal. The first being that we launched our weekly Facebook Live events to highlight an employer that is hiring during this time. We've been doing that for over 4 weeks now, and our videos have received over 1,200 views, as each of those videos has received over 1,200 views of people looking at that for those hiring opportunities. We have actually also had an employer hire someone from that specific experience. They learned about it and were connected via Facebook Live, which was, you know, we're learning all about the virtual connections there. So we were really excited to see that happen. Tara had mentioned earlier some webinars that we've created. Eric Owsley, our regional workforce coordinator, he worked to create a best practices for hiring during social distance webinar, and then also a how to file a mass e-claim for UI. So that both of those are on the resources page of the website. We did have 17 employers attend those events live, but it is posted for, you know, continued access, so that someone who wasn't able to attend it live can still get those resources. We also created one for job seekers around common terms and common themes with unemployment insurance. One of them being, you know, something that we mentioned earlier is the tendency for people to apply again, and really kind of walking them through how that holds up the process a little bit more. That is also posted on the Northern Kentucky resource page. And then some great collaborations have come out of this. We were partnered with the Northern Kentucky Chamber's Workforce Wednesday. Eric Owsley again was a partner on the Workforce Wednesday meeting and talking about the services at the Career Center. So thank you so much to the Chamber for allowing us to talk about our services there. And I'm going to jump down to the bottom here. We're also partnering with the Kenton County Library for the Elevator Pitch Power Hour. That is a virtual workshop that happens on Tuesday mornings, really helping those job seekers develop their pitch as they're going back into the workforce and looking for jobs. Natalie shared with me just a minute ago that we currently have 57 individuals that are participating in that right now with one of our business service representatives. So huge thank you to Dave and Natalie for that support. And then we of course have seen increased rapid response activity. We are looking to shift our rapid responses to a virtual presentation, a Zoom presentation, and have had those conversations with Triad and the Chamber. A lot of the rapid response and warn notices that we've received right now have been temporary layoffs, but we are, you know, as things are kind of starting to ramp up, we do expect that there may be some changes in those as businesses might not be able to return to full capacity. And so we're preparing for that and hoping to be able to assist in that. And I think that's about it. That was a lot of information very fast. I apologize. I'm going to turn to the next slide is Corey. If there's any questions or anything like that, I'll keep myself unmuted.
Okay, hearing no questions for Ellen, I'll go ahead and get started. Much of the challenges with unemployment and the volume of calls has already been addressed, but I just wanted to first echo what's already been mentioned by Tara. Thank you so much to Connie Schnell and her team. I mean, they have been Connie, if you email her or call her, she's responding within 10 minutes. I don't understand how she does it. I'm surprised she's not nodding off during this meeting right now. But also thank you to everybody, including Ryan and his team. I know Voc Rehab team members have been pulled into the mix as well, fielding calls. Just really thankful for everybody's contribution. And thank you to Katrina for her offer to have her team become involved. It really does take an all hands on deck approach to meet the incredible need right now. Just to highlight a few things, and most of these things I believe the board is already aware of. Of course, the Kentucky Career Center's closed to in-person services effective at the end of the day on the 17th. So going on 2 months of doing virtual services only, and having learned a lot of lessons from that experience, as Ellen alluded to, we're going to carry some of these practices forward, and a lot of things that we've done virtually have been very successful. So that's sort of a silver lining there in the midst of all of this. The volume of calls that we're receiving, although we're completely inundated, I will say that The vast majority of calls are of the more complex nature right now. So the majority of people who are going to file have already filed. And so the majority of calls that are coming through are needing to get routed to that tier 3 group of individuals that Tara had mentioned before. And so that's part of the reason for the log jam and long wait times is the limited capacity of that tier 3 group. I was in communication with one of our team members this morning, and I believe this is still the case, that tier 3 group has a capacity of 2,000 calls. And once you reach 2,000, you're unable to get into the queue. And that 2,000 or that queue was maxed out at 8:14 this morning. So if that gives you any perspective on demand to get into those tier 3 staff members. We of course have the Amazon Connect system. I'm sorry, I breezed right by that bullet point. The Amazon Connect system has been an effective system for us in terms of fielding all of these multiple calls and being able to get multiple team members from around the state to be a part of this system. Locally, we have at least 15 or 20 folks, and that probably is conservative really in terms of being a part of this system and fielding these calls. But as Tara also mentioned, we're still trying to get more people into that system, but that requires some steps to be taken by the state. And so we're waiting on that to be able to get more people involved. And then we are having discussions about what it's going to look like for us to transition back to in-person services. And I do believe it's going to be a transition. We're having conversations, WIB staff, of course, Tara and Jason and myself and Ellen, as well as Kentucky Career Center leadership. We talked with Connie Schnell and Ryan Henson just on Friday morning about what the phase-in process will look like. And just yesterday, I was on a call with the other one-stop operators of the other regions to try to get a sense of what other regions are thinking in terms of phasing back in. And for the most part, they're in the same position as we are, still trying to figure out a lot of unanswered questions, waiting on the state. Of course, the state has to sort of give the nod first, and then it's really up to our local workforce investment board in terms of when we officially reopen to in-person services. But there's a lot of logistics that need to be worked out as far as PPE and managing what we expect to be significant customer flow. And so we're in the process of having those conversations at the best transition that we can for our customers. I think that's all I had. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Corey, we've sent in our plan for libraries across the state for how we want to reopen. If you're interested in that, I can send you a copy of it.
That'd be great. Thanks, Dave.
Corey, this is John Baines. With respect to reopening, how would you expect that to impact the ability to get the work done? Would this be helpful? Would this, I mean, the volume is incredibly high.
That's a great
of in person. What do you see there changing in terms of your ability to serve customers?
That's a great question, John, and something we've talked about. A lot of things that everybody is discussing is the safety precautions that we need to take to make sure everybody's healthy. But we've also talked about the actual provision of services. And so right now, I believe we have most of March's claims wrapped up. I know that state has made that a priority. But as long as we're backed up as far as we are, if we're in the middle of May still working on wrapping up March claims, we're really not in a good position right now, safety issues aside, to transition back to in-person services because it effectively will decrease our capacity. We need to be more caught up. We need to be closer to managing recent calls. So if we're only a few weeks back in terms of managing unemployment claims, that's way more manageable than having to go back 2 months to manage the multitude of people who are still awaiting their claims to be resolved. And so, to your point, right now, our capacity is decent in terms of managing those customer needs via the Amazon Connect phone system. If we were to discontinue that and go right back into in-person services, our capacity would decrease. And in my view, it would be really unmanageable right now to do what we're doing in an in-person way. So that definitely needs to be considered, and it has been.
I appreciate that very open response, Corey. I think as you think about the safety of reopening, consider what queues would look like outside the building if people are waiting that long to get on the phone with someone. I would make sure that we also understand what waiting outside the building would look like, because we certainly don't want to have large groups of people together.
Absolutely. We've actually talked about what a parking lot triage system might look like to maybe serve people while they're still in their cars, and definitely all of those logistics are being thought through, but that's a big concern for sure.
One of the things, Corey, I'd like to mention, and we talked about this on Friday, that if anybody remembers how 2008, 2009, the recession, and at the Kentucky Career Centers, two things. We had more staff. We were obviously OET. We had more staff at the time, fully staffed, and some extra people. And of course, after reorg, we are down to maybe four staff in Covington, and two of those staff actually work on grants that those programs need to continue. So when you think of the number of individuals that we have to serve, number one, but the safety issues, et cetera, come into play. But getting back to 2008, 2009, the lines out the door and around the corner, and we didn't have to deal with the crisis, the virus that we're dealing with right now. But the number of people out the door around the corner, just double that. Just think of that as, double that if once we do reopen and we are still dealing with as many claims, which, in the future, I can't see that going down for quite some time. But that's what we're dealing with when we think about, the potentially reopening a career center that's dealing with the unemployment side of the business or the operation, So those are things that's reality. And, but we're starting to discuss that, and have preliminary conversations with Jason, Ellen, Ryan, Corey, and myself. And I think that's going to be a very slow process, but to be honest with you, it's reality. And I just want to say that.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sorry to interrupt, but just in the interest of time, we have 5 minutes left and we still have to get to KPI. So it's very relevant conversation. And so I know that I'm sure Corey is available if you want to talk to him offline about things like that. So thank you for the questions, and Corey and Ellen, thank you for the update. And I just want, as I said, the last 5 minutes to talk about the KPIs, both fiscally and programmatically. So I think Liberty, you're up first.
Okay, this is at the top left corner, you'll see that this report is for March of 2020, 75% of the fiscal year. And if you go to the bottom right corner, you can see our expenditures to date. Nothing out of the ordinary. And it looks like overall, we're only 53% obligated. That's it.
Which, given the current climate, is not surprising.
Right. It's not a large part why it's only 53% is because of the ITAs, the training. That's a huge factor, and the work experience is a lot less than what it has been.
Yeah. some of the training vendors, I think if I remember from the executive committee, we talked about this, some of the training vendors don't currently have online options. And so we've not been able to utilize some.
As much. We do have a few, Gateway in Sinclair. There's a few schools that are sending invoices, but not to the volume that we would have been.
Okay. All right. Great. Any questions for Liberty real quickly before we move on? All right. Thanks, Liberty. Jason and David, you want to?
Sure. I'll mention something just real quickly about the KPIs. So we talked about this in depth at the last Business Services Committee meeting. Obviously, the information that you see in front of you, it looks very different than what we're seeing in present day with our labor market. So we are going to be talking about that in depth at the next Business Services Committee to bring back up to date, more of a current picture of what this information will look like or what the labor market shows us post-COVID. And I'll turn it over to David for him to add anything else too.
Yeah, like real quick for time. This is, as I have an April 1 on my desk right now, that's already a historical document. So just real quick, we saw in March that in February, we had like a 3.8 unemployment. By the end of April, by the end of March, it was 4.8. And then if we look at the weekly initial claims, by the end of April 25th, they're projecting 13.7% unemployment for the state of Kentucky. At the county level, it's not much better. And then on a more positive note, though, we can tell by looking at the April KPI that I have here that the Business Service Committee has been trucking along. All these circles are pretty much filled in by the end of April. Can't think of anything else except, like Jason said, we're going to be very proactive about getting current recent numbers out as soon as we get them. It's a bit of a challenge getting county level data out of the state. That's kind of at the bottom of their list when they start parsing all their data. So that's all I've got for today. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a quick question. So when we talk about the unemployment rates, what they are, even if jobs are available, to your point, people still have fear, people still have childcare issues.
Yes.
So not that I'm suggesting we would rewrite the book on how we measure and track this, but I'm wondering, again, how we kind of gather that data of participation rates and who is truly available to take a job at this time. And again, I don't know that we have any good answer to that, but I think it's certainly going to be a piece of what we should be looking at when we talk about numbers as people start going back to work. How many people are not re-entering the workforce because of those barriers?
Yes.
So again, I don't know how we may or may not be able to capture something like that.
Well, real quick, we all know that unemployment rate is not the best measure of workforce participation that we should be looking at the labor force, the actual number of employed versus the number of unemployed, the number of marginally employed, the number of underemployed. We're seeing the whole gamut of that now. We're even starting to see displaced homemakers and things like that. Every category of unemployment is in use at the moment.
Yep. Great comment, Michelle. So thanks, Dave and Jason. And I know we talked a little bit earlier about the development stuff that's going on with development. So I think we have an idea of some of the things that the ad is grants that are coming up that we're applying for. So on that note, I think it's right at the top of the hour. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate you attending. I appreciate the action today. We couldn't move forward without this group. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for your attention and participation, and have a great rest of your day. We are officially adjourned. Bye, everyone.
Dana.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.